Amazing. So when I was doing, do people know these stories? Yes. Because when I was doing preach prep, the only thing that was in my head was these stories for doing the story of the lost coin. And then I thought, let's just share that. This is my childhood. So we're going to go through the story of the 10 silver coins. So here's a woman. She has 10 silver coins and she likes to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, silly cat. Now they've gone all over the place. The woman picks up her silver coins and they've been scattered everywhere. The cat doesn't care. He is stretched out and gone to sleep. The woman counts her silver coins again, but there are only 9. Bother, one of them's gone missing. Never mind, it can't have gone far. Perhaps it's under the rug. No, there's no sign of it there. Perhaps it's bounced into the fireplace. Carefully, she sifts through the ashes. What a messy job. But no, there is no coin. Perhaps it rolled right under the door and out into the garden. She searches and searches, but she cannot find the coin anywhere. She even looks inside her pots and pans, even though she really knows it can't be there. Clatter, bang, what a noise she's making. She's making so much noise, she's woken up the cat. Serves him right. He's off to find a quiet spot in the garden. What's under the cat?
The coin. I knew it would be under the cat. I knew it.
There you are. The cat was lying on it all the time. The missing silver coin is found. The woman laughs. She's so happy. She calls a friend to tell her the good news. And Jesus says, we're like the women's silver coins. God wants every single one of us. Do you guys know what the coin was in the story?
10p.
Do you know what it represents?
God?
It represents all of us. Do you know who the woman is in the story? Do you know who the woman is? She represents God. And God's looking for us like the precious coins. Amazing. You can sit down. So it's a very simple story, and it can go into a children's story. And it's sandwiched in Luke. And it just says, or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin. In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God when over one sinner who repents. So we have a woman. She's got 10 coins. They're really precious to her. It says in the kind of footnotes that this is worth about 1 day's wage. But because it's a woman and we know that they're her coins, it's very likely that they're much more valuable than 1 day's wage because women weren't really earning. So there's a bit of nobody really knows, but it's probably likely that this is her dowry. So it's like the only thing that she owns. It's her protection. So it would be like the most valuable thing that she's got. And she loses it, and she searches diligently, and she finds it. That's the story. So it's really short, but it's really rich. And I love a 3-point talk, so I'm just going to introduce my points now so we know where we're going. So, you're seen, you're sought, be found. And a good place to start when we're talking about any Bible story is the context. So this is in Luke. It's amid a flurry of parables, and it's sandwiched right between the parable of the lost sheep and the parable of the lost son. And it basically is the parable of the lost sheep, which were wonderfully explained by James and Kaide back then. But Jesus is talking to a mixed crowd. Everyone from all walks of life wanted to hear what he was doing, and so he draws this whole crowd wherever he goes. And above it says, now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering round to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and teachers of the law were muttering, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. And how rude is that? Jesus is telling stories and they're muttering in the background, what is he doing? And at the time, the religious leaders, the Pharisees, the Jewish teachers of the law, were so proud of how they kept themselves clean by not associating with the unclean. And the massive thing about this is that they wouldn't eat with the unclean. Maybe they'd see them on the street, but eating with somebody who's a sinner or who's unclean was like a massive no-no. So they've got all this muttering going on, and Jesus is calling himself a rabbi, a teacher, and they're like, what is he doing? And so what Jesus does, he obviously knows what they're going to be saying, or he hears what they're muttering, and he flips all this on its head, declaring that there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents, which is one way to shut up their muttering. But yeah, why has Jesus told this story when we've just had the story of the lost sheep? That was about God searching out sinners and looking for the lost. So why is he saying this one? Well, does anyone know what's kind of startlingly different about this story to a lot of other parables that Jesus says? Anyone know? It's a woman. Woo! And it's not actually that startling to us, and we often overlook it because obviously God, like Jesus, would tell a story with a woman. But this is like absolutely radical, and I've been getting very excited because I've been doing lots of reading about it, but it's very, very exciting. And it's International Women's Day this week, so I feel like it's good that we're talking about how feminist Jesus was. But what Jesus did, he used parables to speak deeply into the experience of those that he was talking about. And he did this with loads. He did this with the lost sheep. The shepherds were kind of the lower place in the lower class or poorer, and so he was doing something that it was telling a story that would make sense to them instantly. And it's crazy that Jesus has chosen to put a story in a context that's familiar and speaks to the lived experiences of the women that were listening. And we know that Jesus had women disciples. And for them, they would have instantly understood what was going on. That was their context. That was where they existed. But especially about the coin and how valuable that would have been to them to have owned their coin and lost it. And it's even more radical because it's in a context where women would never have been taught by religious leaders. Like a rabbi, these are the teachers of the law, actually teaching a woman, no. Especially when there was a daily prayer by Jewish leaders, which was not in the Bible, but it went, "Blessed art thou, O God, for not making me a Gentile, slave, or a woman." And the crazy thing is, Jesus wasn't just letting women listen. He wasn't letting them sit on the sidelines and maybe getting a bit of the story, or maybe being allowed to sneak into the kingdom of heaven through a side door, kind of like a second-class citizen. No, he kind of spun the whole thing to put them right in the forefront. He was speaking directly to them into a context that was familiar. And what he was saying was, "I see you." And he's done this through so many parables, and his whole ministry was saying to the sick, the poor, the outcast, the downtrodden, the tax collector, that he sees you where you are. And what's even crazier is, who's the woman in the story representing? God. Yeah, that's bonkers. And this isn't some type of kind of Ariana Grande God is a woman situation going on. But discussed by Kenneth Bailey in his book, The Good Shepherd, we know that God is spirit, so he's neither man or woman. But humankind, male and female, is made in the image of God. And so in this tiny story, just snuck in between loads of others, God is reaffirming the Genesis truth of male and female, of it saying, so God created human beings in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. This is not a new concept that God values women. But through the course of history, through sin entering the world, this balance has been thrown off. And Jesus came back to go, no, I'm setting it all straight. We're setting a new kingdom. And he's saying dramatically that women reflect the image of God as much as men, because he used a woman in the story to represent God, which is very, very exciting. Okay, so what point am I trying to make? I've just gone on a feminist tangent, but you are seen. You know, women were the lower class citizens, and Jesus made a point to go, you're seen. And so wherever you are in kind of the ranking that society has put you, you're seen by God. You're made in his image, and you're ridiculously precious to him. So the second point is you're sought by him. But first of all, who is he seeking? Who's the lost? Who's the lost coin? And basically it's anyone far from God. Anyone who doesn't have a relationship with our Heavenly Father. And interestingly, in this kind of flurry of parables, we've got the lost shepherd, the lost sheep, and the parable of the prodigal son. And in these three stories with the lost coin, there kind of seems to be this two kinds of lostness. There's a lostness in the wilderness, like the sheep or the first prodigal son. And that could mean those of us who are kind of actively turned away from God or have never known God, kind of in the wilderness of the world, in all its ups and downs and drama. And those of us who feel like we're too far gone to be brought into God's family. But there's also this second type of lostness, which I think is another reason why Jesus chose to tell this story. And that's the lostness in the house. Jesus had this mixed crowd, and he knew that he had the religious leaders listening. And it's also like the second son in the prodigal son. We can be lost kind of in the shadow of the temple. We could be like the religious leaders who were soaked in religion all day, but like Kaede said, still were far away from the heart of the Father. And that goes hand in hand with God saying that you're seen. He knew that we were all lost. We were all far away from the Father. And he wanted to bring all of us back to him. So like the Pharisees, we might be doing all the right things in the house of the Lord, being holy, but we can still be lost by being bogged down in religion and pride and succeeding in our own strength. I know I'm guilty of this. But God is diligently seeking the lost, which is good. He doesn't leave us in our lostness. But what does it actually look like to be sought? It's kind of like, it's nice in a story and a parable, we kind of get that idea of searching. What does it actually look like for God to search the lost in day-to-day life? One of my favourite examples of how God does this is from a girl in my secondary school, and she's kindly allowed me to share this story. So she went to church when she was very young, but her family stopped going quite early. And when she was about 7, her mum started getting into witchcraft. So started doing like proper, like going in the night to do cauldrons and spells and crystals and like proper pentagram witchcraft. And my friend got kind of churned up in all of this and started doing it as well. But then she moved to my kind of Christian ethos school when she was in year 6. And we used to hold violin every day in the morning, and we would sing some half-hearted hymns, which some of them were banging, like Shine Jesus Shine. Like I was on a Monday morning like all over that, but it was very like everyone was like Shine Jesus Shine. And then we'd have some teachers who didn't really know Jesus, and then they would say some kind of general prayer at the end, and we'd all go on to science or whatever. But she joined the school, and she refused to sing in assembly or join in with any of the prayers. She would adamantly keep her mouth shut. And generally just had very little Christian influence in her life. I didn't know her at the time. And so the only really Christian part were these fleeting moments at the start of the day. And she was telling me that as Christmas assembly of year 8, she went as usual, and she didn't join in. But partway through the assembly, she just found herself joining in with the hymns and the prayers. And she went home, and she was like, "What? Like, why did I do that? Why did I join in?" And that very night, she just decided, in her own words, this is what she's messaged me, she decided to become a Christian again and was praying for forgiveness for turning away to witchcraft. And since that day, she wanted to be with God more. And it's just bonkers, because she had, we always think she needed to hear some amazing gospel message or have some Christian friend talking to her. But God was seeking her out in the Monday morning assemblies. And her life is, she's totally committed to God now. And I just find it the coolest story. Because it shows how God just seeks us out wherever we are, whoever we are, even if we're into witchcraft or whatever. But there are so many ways that God is seeking us out if we have our hearts soft and receptive to it. For some people, this can be in really joyous moments in their life, like having a first baby can suddenly be a moment where you think oh my gosh, maybe there's something more. And for some people, tragically, it's through the hardest parts of their life where pain and grief mean that you start turning to wonder if there's something out there, or someone who cares, or someone who understands. Psalm 19 says, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the works of his hand." It's like if we have eyes to see, especially in Cornwall, God is seeking everybody out by just putting the crazy sunsets that he does over the sea. But most of the time, God chooses to partner with us to seek out the lost. My friend, she turned to God by herself, just through the Holy Spirit. But she only connected with me when I listened to God in lockdown, when I felt that he was telling me to just post a Bible verse a day, my Corona verses, to encourage people during lockdown. So I just posted a Bible verse a day on my Instagram story, and she didn't know me. I was quite a few years older than her in school, and she just messaged me. And through that, we were able to have Bible studies over Snapchat because her mum couldn't hear. And yeah, it was just the most exciting time, seeing her faith grow so dramatically. And that's the thing, God continues to partner with us in what he's doing. So what are the ways that one, God is seeking you out today? You might not know God, and it could just be being here today, being invited, finding your Christian friends keep popping up. Some people just keep having Christian friends, and you're come on, God, what are you doing? Maybe you feel you've been ignoring the little nudges from God recently. And for us who already know God, what are we doing to partner with him in what he's doing? Who do we know in our life that we really feel God is seeking out? And can we ask God what he wants us to do? So, you're seen. We know that God is seeking out the lost. We know that he's searching diligently like this woman. And he's searching because you're really, really precious to him. I think it's quite hard to remember that. I mean, I often don't feel precious to God. And I think we can often feel like a shiny coin when we've we're presenting the best sides of ourselves, when we've been really fun one day, or we're meeting new people, and we just feel like we're just shiny coin or whatever. But I don't know about you, but does anyone struggle with that feeling that when people really get to know me, they'll realize and they'll be disappointed, or they'll realize that shininess is not so shiny? And I think that's the scary thing with God, because it says that he knows all of us. He knows, he doesn't see the kind of outside, the nice presentation of ourselves. He sees all of us and that mess that we know that we're worried about. If other people see that, then they'll be disappointed. But, where's the coin? When God seeks it? I don't know, guys, where's the coin? It's lying in the dust and the dark. It's in, I was reading about the houses at the time, and they only had tiny slit windows at the top of the ceiling. And we're in, the desert or whatever. So they're full of just, ash and dirt, and it's really hard to see. And like a lot of you, I feel like I'm often in the dark and the dust and pretty messy. But the crazy thing is, like, God's like, no, I'm searching you there. I'm not searching you when you're a shiny coin. So wherever you are, like, God is searching you right now. Like, he knows you, and that's the even crazier part. He knows all of you, and he's still searching for you, still loves you, still wants a relationship with you. And that's the final point, just be found. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Does anyone remember what it feels like to be lost in the supermarket? Because I went to Sainsbury's with my flatmates the other day, and I had like deep flashbacks because I lost my two housemates, and Sainsbury's is huge, and all of a sudden I was right back to being 5, like going up and down the aisles, like, Mom, where are you? That's really scary, guys. But I did find them. But what a relief when you turn the corner and you'd see your mum like rushing towards you, and she'd scoop you up into her arms and be like, I found you, it's fine. And that's what it's like when we come into the Father's arms. Some of you might not even know that you're missing anything. Might not even know that there is a Father who's going up and down the aisles looking for you. But God is calling your name over the tannoy. And you have a choice of how you're going to respond. We're not inanimate coins. We have free will. And we have a choice whether we're going to turn towards him. And it says at the end, there's rejoicing over one sinner who repents. Yes. And sinner is a scary word. It's not a nice word. We don't like it in church. But all it means is the people we've hurt, where we've hurt others, where we've hurt ourselves, where we've hurt God, where we've turned away from God. And that's all of us. It's not like you're a sinner. It's every single one of us. And repenting just means turning back. Just means being found by God. So how do we be found? Well, it's easy. We just say sorry and we turn back to God. And we say sorry for what we've done that have hurt people. And we receive the abundant forgiveness that God has. And we're just found in his arms again. And that's the exciting part, is that it says there was rejoicing in all of heaven over anyone who turns back to God. And I think a lot of us need to know that. And I think a lot of us who know God need to know that today, that there is so much rejoicing over heaven about you. You're not sneaking in like a second-class citizen. God's not just let you in because he feels like he should. You are rejoiced over. And if you feel like today you're turning back to God, maybe back or maybe for the first time, you need to know how much of a party they're having in heaven over you. And for those of you who have been walking with the Father for a long time and feel a bit like it's the second son, know again that they are still rejoicing over you. God sees all the little things that you're doing, and they're celebrating. And there's a hullabaloo in heaven. Okay. So yeah, let's take a bit of a time in the response to come to God, to repent of the ways that we've been lost from him, the ways that we have, like the Pharisees, gone with our own kind of pride and understanding and stormed ahead without God. Let's ask for his forgiveness and allow ourselves to be found by God. And if that's for the first time, then I really encourage you to come to the prayer team or find someone like Heide or me or whoever's brought you along. It's the most exciting adventure you will ever go on, being found by God, coming back to the Father's heart.